So welcome everybody to the recording of our seminar on gamification in training in the workplace. You have a special just for you. We are re-recording this intro because we didn't actually record it for the live session, but in about 5 or 10 minutes we will join the recording of the live session already in progress. Thanks again for having a look at this recording. So excited to welcome you all. My apologies for not being able to fit everybody's logos on the screen. We were really very, very pleased with the turnout. We had over 100 people responding. For those who are remote, please feel free to share your company or your country that you're calling from. And for any of you who received a duplicate invitation, my apologies for that. It was a technical glitch from Google, and we'll make sure that that doesn't happen in the future. Again, this is a seminar on gamified training, gamified learning. It's a partnership between PaleBlue and Neptune Energy, which as of a day ago is now Energi. You'll hear from 3 speakers today, myself, Scott Dodson, as well as Felix Gorbatsevich and Turi from PaleBlue and from Energi. This is the agenda. We'll start with a little introduction, then I will get into the core of gamification motivation, kind of best practices and the things I've learned over a couple of decades of working with sustained engagement in consumer and B2B products. And I think you'll get some great takeaways there no matter what your business or goals are. Then we'll move on to case study, some work that PaleBlue has done with Energi over the past couple of years. And then finally, kind of the highlight will be to share the brand new gamification platform that PaleBlue has developed and then give you a little special surprise to everybody attending. So the question we're trying to answer today is, can we apply engagement principles from games to workforce training and development? And how can e-learning become more interactive and effective? We'll kick it off with a poll. Have you ever used or experienced gamification at work or in a professional context? So based on the responses from the online group, quite a few actually have used gamification. 16 out of 23 have actually used or experienced gamification in their work or in a professional context versus 7 who have not. Surprising, a little more than the people in the room actually. All right, so let's get into the meat of my part of this. And all right, so what are the core principles of gamification and motivation that drive engagement and retention? I'm going to give you a little introduction of myself. So I was born outside of New York, went to school there, had most of my career in Seattle, moved to London for an opportunity, was there for 2 years, Estonia for 5 years, Malta for a year, and now I live in Barcelona. PaleBlue obviously is located in Norway. I've also done a lot of business in a bunch of areas in the world: Japan, Taiwan, India, Brazil, Canada, etc. In addition to PaleBlue, I've been a Techstar Mentors for over 10 years. Coached many companies to their first funding round, kind of taking companies from zero to one. CGO, Chief Growth Officer of a company called Ling out of Thailand. I was the CMO of the Play Magnus Group, which is a Norwegian company that sold to chess.com last year. I was the CMO of Hero Gaming, where among other things we sold off a small part of the business for about 25 million. I was the Chief Growth Officer and Chief Product Officer for Linguist, took that from single-digit thousands of users up to 5 million. Chief Product Officer, Head of Marketing, and Business Owner for Virgin Poker at GameSys. After 2 years there, we sold off a big chunk of the business for a big exit. But also before that, I did honest work. So I was a professor of game design at DigiPen University, one of the best game design schools in the world, and was recognized actually as a top worldwide gamification guru. This came out of work that I had done for a couple of game companies. I was a CEO and founder of a couple of founded game companies, publishers, as well as the Chief Product Officer for a gamified fintech that worked with Capital One and Prudential. But really, what defines me more than anything is I'm a nerd. I discovered games, luckily, at a very early age, and this had a profound impact on how I learn to be effective in my life, motivate myself to do things, learn to play well with others. And it was really upon reflection on those games and then watching kind of my own kids go through their process and see the power of engagement that came out of games that spurred me into diving into gamification and using that. So I'm going to go over some real core concepts. First of all, I think the most important thing is to think about gamification as a subset of design. So if you've got the larger category of design, within design, you have motivational design. How do you build things that make people do things? And then within that, you have gamification, which are a set of specific tools and techniques within the category of motivational design. Second most important thing to kind of recognize is that there are two fundamental types of motivation: extrinsic motivation and intrinsic motivation. Extrinsic motivation is, I jump through a hoop, I get a cookie, I work all week, I get a paycheck, things that are motivated by external rewards and punishments. Intrinsic motivation is often the things that, frankly, you pay other people to do. I love to ski and snowboard. Certainly that's not cheap. Kids will build a block castle only to knock it down and just build it again, because the actual experience itself is what's important, not the end goal. When we think about trying to motivate people to do something, though, our first response, or our instinct, is to go to extrinsic motivation. What cookie do I need to give this person in order to get them to jump through the hoop? But the reality is that that type of thinking can really backfire. It's often sometimes necessary, but it's very short-lived. So there's a great book out there called Punished by Rewards I recommend. One of the examples in this book, case study where they took kids, but they've done this study with adults as well, and they measured essentially their reward centers of their brain while it's doing an activity. So draw a picture of a house. The control group is just drawing the house and then turning it in. The reward group, the experimental group, is actually getting a lollipop at the end of when they turn in their drawing. And when you look at those MRI scans, the group that's anticipating the reward does have a few more kind of, hot spots that are lit up in the reward centers of the brain. When you repeat the experiment, however, draw a tree, only this time we don't have any lollipops, just turn in your drawing. The first group is actually still gets a reward out of the experience, an intrinsic reward. The group where you introduce the extrinsic reward essentially has now, you've killed the joy from that experience by introducing this extrinsic reward. And the reality is even things that we consider work are often intrinsically motivating. The right type of work can be very, very motivating. If you're feeling like you're making a difference, or producing something of value, or doing something creative, working with others that really you enjoy the experience of. These are all very, very intrinsically satisfying, and I'll show you exactly why. And the other thing that's interesting is when you invest in something like work, even if it's in a work environment or even a game context. For example, this is a World of Warcraft picture of people kind of who completed the final boss at this time. It's very, you made an investment and you want to kind of get more and more out of that. It leads to retention. So what are the underlying principles behind this? So this is really pioneered by a PhD by the name of Scott Rigby, who worked with two other PhDs in motivational psych out of Rochester Institute of Technology, and they developed what they call the PENS model, the personal experience of needs satisfaction. You don't have to remember that, but what you want to remember is that there are three key drivers for intrinsic motivation: competence, feeling good at something. We all want to essentially learn something new or achieve mastery in something we know, and it's highly, highly satisfying to our kind of fundamental needs for this. Just like food or water, these are psychological needs. However, autonomy, this is the sense that we have freedom and agency in our own life or in our own day. We are exercising volition, making choices that matter to us, and making meaningful progress towards the goal that matters to us in a way that's consistent with our values. And then lastly, relatedness, the sense that I matter to you and you matter to me. This is, comes from having meaningful connections with people, working together, competing even. These things are very, very satisfying. And what's interesting is that when they first looked at games and they studied what was predictive of people's long-term engagement in games. Now, you would expect it would be something like fun, and when games had really, really high scores in the category of fun, that people would be involved over the long haul. But the truth was that that wasn't predictive, at least not in the way that this satisfaction of these intrinsic psychological needs for autonomy, competence, and relatedness was predictive of long-term engagement. So this is a model that I got to discovered about 15 years ago and has made a tremendous difference in all the work that I've done. Just to kind of give you a little bit of the science behind it, this is something they duplicated with 20,000 plus test subjects. This was actually a number of years ago, across culture, age, geography, etc., and compared against many other kind of attributes. So it's a model that works. So how do you drive competence satisfaction? How do you give people an experience where they essentially feel like they're learning something, feeling like they're good at something? One of the best ways is essentially described by this flow channel. So what you need to do is challenges are actually very compelling, as long as it's not too difficult. If you are given a challenge that's way above your ability to accomplish it, it actually creates stress, creates anxiety. But if you actually are able to kind of overcome that challenge, and it's not too difficult, but it was at least, there was a struggle before you overcame it, it's actually quite satisfying. And then if your challenge never scales, if it never gets any harder, and you're just forced to repeat the experience, it quickly goes into boredom. So the ability to kind of segment this set of challenges over time is very important. In other words, the things that somebody has to overcome in an onboarding scenario, how do the buttons work, or where am I supposed to click, or what am I supposed to do, are very different once they figure that out, and now they're supposed to use the tool and actually accomplish something and then achieve mastery. So basically, by designing for flow, you can segment the experience. The second thing is that we miss a lot in our lives what I call, or actually what Scott Rigby called, unambiguous, juicy feedback. When you write an email at work, nobody's behind you going, way to go, that was amazing. God, that Slack message, just like, that was fantastic. Like, you don't get this kind of feedback, and that would be kind of silly, right? But we, even when we do things that are kind of large and important, sometimes we miss that. Games provide that in spades, right? Like, if games are incredibly good at essentially making us feel like we just did something important, even if we didn't. But that's extremely compelling to kind of take the next level. So that's competence. And the questions to ask yourself is, do I provide these appropriately scaled challenges? Do I allow people to kind of invest in their work? And then how do I track and show their progress for that investment that they've made? And do I reinforce, their competence via good feedback? Second piece is autonomy. So this is about making, sorry, back up a second. Meaning, like, making choices and not feeling like you're trapped, you're on rails, you have no experience. They took a subway in Stockholm and transformed one of the stairways into a working piano keyboard. And they measured the difference of the number of people that took the stairs versus the escalator, and it was pretty impressive, right? 66% more people chose the elevator because they were playing around. They could essentially make noise as they went up and down the stairs. And this is exactly the kind of thing where you're kind of giving somebody some freedom to explore something, and particularly this is powerful when that's just kind of how to get, your goal there is just to get above to the street level, but when you can align that with people's actual personal goals, it's much more powerful. And there are ways to frame the activities and the requirements that you do in the context of what's actually important to people. All right, almost done with this stuff. So, okay, sorry, autonomy. Again, the three pieces of this, can I help people understand how my product aligns, or how the actions that I'm requiring of them supports their long-term goals? Do I provide meaningful choices, flexibility, multiple ways to achieve the result? And do I avoid kind of forcing the outcome, or treating them kind of like they're trapped in a situation? And this one's probably the easiest for us to understand. Anytime somebody does something for you, you appreciate it, right? You go, wow, that I matter to them. That's very compelling. You can also kind of create that experience in a one-on-one competitive situation, because if you're playing one-on-one basketball and somebody's reacting to your every move, then clearly you matter to them. So it doesn't have to be competitive though. You know, when you're doing a team building exercise that actually is meaningful and overcoming a challenge, it's fantastic. You know, the act of giving and receiving, as I said, is very, very powerful. And then whenever you apply effort on someone's behalf, putting humor into something, taking an extra moment to kind of, you know, make some interesting copy or craftsmanship in the work that you do, and people can feel it, they actually feel like related to you as a developer, or, you know, and this also can happen as for characters in a book. If an author crafts a well-rounded novel, you feel connected to those characters, you feel connected to those authors. So again, how do you connect with others or make a connection with you directly? How does it, you know, is there a way that you can allow this to share an experience? That's actually meaningful. And do I invest time and craftsmanship to make you feel like you matter? And then what's my user experience? Is it smooth? Is it easy? Or is it frustrating and confusing? When it's frustrating and confusing, clearly the message is, I don't matter to you, so, you know, I'm not going to engage. So intrinsic motivation is, I think, the North Star. And then I'm just going to give you one small basket of tricks, I guess, or techniques that are also, I think, some of the most like effective that I found in gamification. And these are basically the Zeigarnik effect, random reinforcement, reciprocity, which I've already touched on, head start mechanics, and non-monetary rewards. Really quick, the Zeigarnik effect is that unfinished business sticks in memory. And you'll see this everywhere. You know, this is basically on LinkedIn, or anytime you're kind of getting somebody to do a bunch of steps, they want to see that box complete, they want to see 100%, etc. Step-by-step process, only one more step to go. You kind of have this itch to complete that. Second one is random reinforcement. Random reinforcement, I think, as just our nature as hunter-gatherers, we're much more attracted to kind of not knowing when the reward is going to come than if something is just steady. And every time I do this, I jump through a hoop, I get a cookie. I jump through a hoop, I get a cookie. Much better to maybe not get a couple of cookies and then get 10 cookies. And this is why there are so many like effective business models, ethics aside perhaps, around some of these mechanics, right? Even something like Tinder essentially is random reinforcement. And then last but not least, or sorry, not quite last, almost last but not least, reciprocity. So giving first creates a sense of obligation, and if done right, it can be done very well. I mean, I think this is kind of the core of product-led growth in a sense, where you can try something for free. I mean, there's obviously a practical sense to it too, but there's a real strong kind of, we like to actually give people something that's of value. When somebody gives us something, we want to give back. Head start mechanics, pretty self-explanatory. The card on the right is much, much more effective, even though there's no difference. It's like a loyalty card, right, or of a coffee shop or something like that. That's why I see some of these are kind of tricks. And then lastly, again, getting back to intrinsic over extrinsic, it's much more powerful when you can give somebody a reward in the currency that they're there for in the first place. More space for Dropbox, you know, free rides for Uber, lights, upgrades, VIP treatment on airlines. This is something I discovered one of my game companies. We would run tournaments and we would give cash prizes, and then sometimes we would give prizes like at the time an iPod or Xboxes or PlayStations. We got way more people interested in the physical prize than the money of equal value. Okay, that is it for the beginning. If anybody has any questions, we can do a little of that. Otherwise, we'll jump into the next sections and I'll introduce the next presenters.
There's a question in the audience.
Is there?
Yes, just in here.
Sorry.
If I go into creating value through motivational design, applying psychology, whatever skills that I have, right? What are the roles that people have when they create value like this?
So in other words, like, can you get a job as a director of motivational design or
no, what the roles? So director, to be director, it takes many steps. So
sure.
Where do you start?
So yeah. I mean, the interesting thing about I think trends right now, AI is you know, kind of at the peak of this, right? A few years ago was Web3 and blockchain and, you know, et cetera. So there was actually a brief moment in history for gamification. It's how we raised money for this fintech that was based around that. And I think at the time, you know, they were predicting a lot of, you know, there were going to be these gamification experts and all this kind of thing. I think the reality is this just has to be, unfortunately, I think, part of your toolkit, right? I mean, I think that I will say that if the Gartner hype cycle essentially means things get really hyped, then they crash, and then they actually come back and become productive. They hit the plateau of productivity. And I think that's where we are with gamification. So let's see, whereas people were predicting you'll be the, gamification manager at a bank or whatever 10 years ago. Now I think it actually may, and you do see some roles around engagement or customer engagement or some things like that some titles that get there. But it is hard. It kind of needs to be a yes and, I think. Like, you can't just show up with gamification. You have to show up with some domain expertise and then make it.
And the answer is actually learning and development, because nowadays it's human resources, learning and development, and creating e-learning, and we have to apply those methodologies, including gamification.
And it was better answered than I by the same question, who basically said the path is learning and development these days, because you really need to kind of have this as part of your skill set. But let's do one more quick poll. So again, show of hands in the audience, and online we can launch this poll, which is, have you ever used or experienced VR at work or in a professional context? So has anybody ever used or experienced VR in a professional context? Okay, so this is a little more than gamification. I'd say something like twice as many people roughly in the room. Let's see what it looks like online. Okay, all right, so yeah, we're 15-1 online for VR, so far.
Using gamification in relation to what is ordinarily a boring desktop exercise,
sure,
as opposed to a game.
Sure. So yeah, okay. So basically, I think if I understand the question, you can clarify. But can you relate kind of some of the most, say, potent times where you've been able to apply gamification in your career, as opposed to just a game or?
Yeah.
So I think the fintech was a really good example. I mean, there's a couple very solid examples, but that was the first one, I think, where we really went at it hard. And when you're trying to get people to save money for retirement, it's very difficult. But we kind of use some of those North Stars as essentially trying to get them to build a relationship with their future self, if that makes any sense, to actually love your future self almost as much as you love your current self, because otherwise you're not very much concerned with saving money, particularly if you're younger. And I think, and then just in general, I mean, I've worked with a lot of consumer products and apps. And these things are extremely valuable when you're onboarding somebody, getting them to understand what your product is, how to discover the value in the product, how to essentially find what I call the value loop. Like, how do you how do you get one unit of value out of the application, whether it's a learning application or a financial application, and then how do you form a habit around that value, to create essentially a pattern of sustained engagement. Yeah, I see there's one more question. Question is, what are the best metrics that allow you to demonstrate the impact of gamification before and after? I mean, I think that at least the way we've done this in the past on the apps is probably the easiest place, because there's lots of consumer data, lots of people using the apps, and you can run any number of significant A/B tests. And it varies case by case. In some cases, like with let's just say Linguist, what we were ultimately after was long-term retention, right? Because, and this is also, I think, a very key concept, that retention is a very, I think, underappreciated metric. But the reality is if you have, you feel it very powerfully in a consumer app or in a B2B situation, where if your customers churn over time, you essentially have a leaky bucket and you cannot grow. So growth only comes from what I say, stacking essentially retained cohorts of people who find essentially perpetual value off of what you're building. But the problem is that's very difficult to measure, right? Because sustained retention, we would measure it at Linguist. For us, it was kind of 60 to 90 days out was kind of the minimum amount of time. So if you're running an experiment during onboarding, it's very hard to kind of see what that impact is going to be until 60 or 90 days later. So we had to build essentially a set of proxy metrics. So behaviors that happen in the first week and the first month that were then predictive of essentially those 60 or 90-day core metrics that were really the most important to retention. Okay, next up, you get to stop listening to me. So I'm going to introduce our next two speakers. Do a quick bio. So Dr. Felix Gorbatsevich is a co-founder of CEO of PaleBlue. He holds a PhD in computer science and has worked previously at technology companies including Acre Solutions, MH Worth, Sun Microsystems, and in roles ranging from software engineer and systems architect to project manager and managing director. Now, as the CEO of PaleBlue, he leads the development of 3D simulators and virtual reality solutions for our clients, which include Saudi Aramco, Neptune Energy, and the European Space Agency. Turi is the Health and Work Environment Manager at Neptune / Energy now, and holds a degree in safety engineering from the Western Norway University of Applied Sciences. His career spans over 13 years in leadership positions, and he currently leads the Health and Work Environment initiatives at Energi. Jan's expertise encompasses medical treatment, emergency response, primary health care, occupational health, and various safety responsibilities. His extensive background includes over a decade as the team leader for health and work environment at Semi, where he demonstrated proficiency in areas such as radiation protection, chemical risk assessments, incident reporting, and safe job analysis. So if I could invite you both to join us up here, and I will step away. So I think if you could both maybe share a little bit about the companies you work for, and then get into the case study.
Sure. Thank you very much, Scott. So
Thank you.
we're going to present our companies first, and then we'll talk about the specific case study where we work together for creating gamified learning experiences for the employees of Neptune Energy, now Energi. I'll start with PaleBlue. PaleBlue is a training simulators company. We've been around for 10 years now, 11 soon. And we're based here in Stavanger. And our core competencies are within digital training, simulators, operational training, and increasingly more and more we're starting to apply gamification now. So that's what we're doing. And some of the work examples that you'll see how they are rooted within training, digital training, simulation, and such. So we do operate in a number of verticals. We're quite happy to work with some of the biggest names out there. And for example, within the space industry, we work with NASA Johnson Space Center. We work with the European Space Agency. Within energy, we still have the privilege of working with the Neptune and Energi, with Saudi Aramco, Baker Hughes, and many others. And we also operate within the public segment. We supply training solutions and operational solutions on various of platforms, from screens to VR, XR devices. And I'll hand it over to Jan.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for the invitation. So 2 days ago, I was representing Neptune Energy. Yesterday, we become a part of Energi. So we will be an independent part of Energi until the spring, and then we'll be fully integrated in Energi. So I will talk a little bit about Energi, but you will see on the presentation we will use the old name because of the studies from last year, of course. So Energi is one of the biggest oil and gas independent companies on the Norwegian continental shelf. Approximately 1,300 employees, 300 with us from the old Neptune. So yeah. And started in 2018, and they have ambition on the Norwegian continental shelf for the future. So they will be a strong upcoming company with growth intention within the oil and gas. Yes, that's the main topics, I think. I am now out in the North Sea as a health and work environment engineer is the title, but in the background is a nurse. So I'm the medic or nurse on board at Gjøa offshore installation out in the North Sea. I've been there for several years, but I have also been onshore the last year when I was working a little bit with the PaleBlue as a health and work manager there. So my background is from the health industry.
So and now we're going to look at the solutions where we work together. But maybe I'll just ask you a question first. So how do you see the challenges of working in harsh environments in the northern seas? How does that affect the way you have to train the personnel and have them ready for things? Is there anything that you've been doing traditionally, let's say, for training?
Yeah. The challenges is that we cannot train with the live fire. Of course, we cannot train. We have to simulate a lot of stuff, and often it will be with standard classroom sessions or tabletops, etc., where you try to think how thing will develop in a situation, for example. Or we can train our first aiders or firefighters in simulated normal environment inside a classroom or something. So it's a little bit challenging for us to do it on the live way. We have to go to center onshore to train that kind of stuff.
Okay, understood. All right, thanks. We'll talk about a couple of things that we did together with Neptune. The first project that we did with them was a tool for familiarization in VR. So there's a bit of a movie.
Neptune Energy completed a pilot project on its operated Joa platform in the Norwegian North Sea. The project is developed by PaleBlue, a company specializing in three-dimensional virtual reality simulators for professional use. The resulting system is a familiarization and safety training simulator in virtual reality, allowing to build up knowledge and awareness of this complex multi-level oil platform.
I'll just mute the sound. This is to say that it's quite valuable to be able to transfer the 3D assets from CAD models, PDMS, whatever backend is used, and being able to place them in a simulated environment. I know that many people in the audience have done the same in their daily jobs, but seeing the value of how easily this can be done these days, really transfer a large complex CAD model, make it available for real-time 3D rendering and accessing it, whether on screens or in VR, that's very, very valuable, and that can lead to many scenarios of how this can be used, and we'll talk about that in a moment. Having done this first phase, we looked back at it and we thought, I think you guys came to us and said, yeah, let's maybe take it to the next step. Let's add more gamification elements, but also let's think how we can engage more people in the system. Because I think what we saw is that using VR, you're still bottlenecked to the amount of devices. Not everyone has a VR headset on the desk, right? So it's more straightforward and much easier to spread it out in the organizations if this can be available in a different format, say on the web, on screen, in such mediums. So our second phase of our work was introducing gamification on screen. So here's an example, again, a bit of a demonstration of a day in the life of oil worker.
Great job! You've picked up the flashlight. Use it to examine the valves.
I don't see any issues with this valve. This one is good. There is an oil leak from the valve. I need to file a report on the malfunction prior to commencing any repairs.
So this whole routine is based on the procedures that we found in Neptune Energy on how do you actually get a work permit. So you kind of face a situation that you see a problem, you need to fix it, and how do you go about it? So how do you apply for a work permit? How do you get it approved? What are the important elements and steps in that process? So it instead of being a text-based slides telling you this is how you work with work permits, it becomes a game, right? And that's the whole thinking. How can you turn something very traditional, and maybe I would use the word boring, it's not boring, but let's just pretend for a minute it is, to something that is giving you the same learning value, but is framed like an interactive game-like experience. So this was one of the two modules that we did on this gamification, and I'll show you the second module in a moment. So this time you're actually on the digital twin of the platform you are.
I could take these stairs to the lower deck, but this time I'd rather take the stairs in the riser area. This way I will get closer to C30.
So this exercise, it takes you to a digital twin of the oil platform, and it allows you really to experience a certain set of challenges. So you're working, and then there's alarm coming in. You have to evacuate, so you have to get your life suit, whatever that's called, and find the lifeboat. So with this, this allowed us to transfer what used to be, say, VR experience on screen, make it available on web, make it be possible to integrate to your learning management system, e-learning system, so making it much more available. So in the end, I think all the people that were traveling offshore to this oil platform were getting these training modules, and they could go through the platform virtually on their screens before they actually went there. Yeah. So these are the two other examples of our joint work. And with this, I think I'll pass it over to Jan to talk about the results and the effects of this gamified work that we did together.
Yeah. So this is two courses we set up, which are mandatory for newcomers on board at our offshore installation. So they have to take this course before entering offshore. We had the traditional e-learning courses before, but we want to try this one in a gamification way, where we had a little bit more interaction with the person. And we tested it over some months to get enough people to do the survey, and we find some good results from this period. One of the main issues for us was that they think it was fun. They find again the environment when they enter the Gjøa, because of the gamification of the platform is
close to reality.
Yeah, it's reality.
Yeah,
and that's make it very useful. And when you interact, you also have you don't just listen and see or drag and drop, but you also participate. And our ambition is that the content stick a little bit more to the person afterwards, and that's one of the elements. And of course, some of them also mention it's easy to use, because this generation is familiar with gaming and use. Yeah. So yeah, that was some of the findings.
So and then we've collected feedback from the participants, and there were many pleasant and nice words said about how they experienced it and what they think worked.
Yes.
About it.
Yeah. So we was quite satisfied with the results, and we give the thumbs up for the introduction, and have given the back to training departments in War Energy to take it further to look at what other kind of courses we can gamify. Maybe something we saw during the work, that's the opportunities to use gamification courses where we have the environments is exactly the same as in reality, and you can play the scenarios. So we have thought a little bit about using it for the drills and exercises. Tabletops will be a little bit more interesting if you can maybe have some gamification of the tabletops exercises. Maybe we can also use it for planning of work. Of course, we have the 3D models already. We can measure, and plan a lifting operation, but this will be a little bit more interactive. you can do something wrong and see what's happened. You can go to the left, you can go to the right and see. You can push a button and see what's happened. So we saw some interesting future things.
Yeah. Okay, I see.
Yeah, new ways of educating people. Of course, when you can add some more in the session, not just listen and look, but you can also be a part of the session. That's good. So yeah.
Sure. All right. Excellent. So I think we can also open for questions from the audience, and that applies the people here in the room and also people remotely. If there are questions to how this work has been done. I think there's a question in the audience over there.
Now that we've been through 2 previous studies, what do you see PaleBlue taking us? What would be the next step?
Next steps for the technology or next steps for the application of this?
Both.
Right. So the next section of this presentation is actually going into how we can build up, because we've really been spending time lately solidifying our gamification platform. Very interesting movement, kind of ongoing, and we would be happy to share that with you in just a few minutes. But of course, we saw the potential of both VR training. We applied it, we saw the results. We saw how the screen-based gamified elements are working, and together that we identified, and I think you were involved in that as well, identified future parts of procedures, future parts of familiarization elements, because definitely there's a lot of coverage on companies' e-learning, right? So, and now that we've started with this small segment, there's so many other parts. So I think what's definitely coming is a combination of tailored experiences, tailored trainings for company, and generic safety topics that could also be trained on HSE. Yes, please.
Respond to being able to, or using interface to understand it? Is it a barrier for someone to actually be able to never game before?
People react in different ways. I think our task as the engineer behind it is to make it as straightforward as possible, as casual as possible. So we're very, very much focusing on what kind of mechanics, game mechanics, interaction mechanics we can and cannot introduce. So we made many choices which were very conscious about stripping away complex interactions, stripping away complex ways of navigating. So the more straightforward it is, the more point and click like interface there is, the wider audience you can cover. And you can still kind of infuse a lot of valuable content, even with the simplified interaction schematic. But what kind of feedback have you been getting?
One of the things is when we test it on new onboard personnel, which are not familiar with the platform, that's okay. But we had some experienced personnel also testing the module, and they had some issues about the speed, and because they knew the area, so they want to speed up the movement of the gaming and etc. So we cannot fit everybody, I think, but in a way we can try to put the right content for everybody in the system, because the newcomers also said that they had to play it a little bit too fast, and when they do a wrong turn in the game,
especially during the evacuation, we have the alarm going, so you have to
exactly.
find your lifeboat, the clock is ticking, and you're taking the wrong turn, then you're really stressed.
Yeah. For us, it's the content. We need the content to stick to the person, with the behavior after gaming a session. That's most important for us, not that they want to play it again. Mm-hmm. It's okay. I understand what they say, and but you can put something in the timing. We're going to run to the lifeboat. Yeah, I know. It's challenging already. Yeah.
Right. Very good point. Any other questions here in the room? Maybe from Scott?
No, I think it's great, because I played these games, if you will, or this training. I've taken these training as after they've been created, and I find that I wanted to replay them. I mean, that familiarization. The second example here, you're basically going along as if you're you're checking out the facility and learning where things are, and you're trying to kind of navigate to where your work is supposed to happen. And then you complete your work, or you're about to complete it, and then all of a sudden this alarm goes off, which is kind of not anticipated, right? So it's like a narrative essentially that happens in the middle of this, and then you've got to get yourself situated and get to the lifeboat and evacuate the station. And yeah, I failed the first time, and so I definitely played it again because I wanted to make sure I could actually. And I think, even though you're right, you just need to retain the content. I think that the fact that I played it again, now I bet I know my way around that station better than most people, right? Just because I had to go through it a couple of times.
We finally have some questions online. Excellent. So how long did this training take? Story to deployment. I think, well, for the 2 phases that we're talking about, so this is a question on the length of the development. The first phase, the VR phase, I think it took us 4 months until we had the first deployment and the first VR sessions running, if I remember it correctly, something like that. And the second, gamification modules, how much time did we use on that? I think it was also comparable timeline.
Yeah, a couple of months.
Yeah, so yeah, so 4 months until maybe we saw the first 3-4 months until we saw the first results, and in 6 months we had both modules fully working, and the rollout was done to the employees and externals.
But that's also the work with the gamification of the platform. So if we will want some new gaming sessions at UA, it's will take much shorter time.
Yeah, that's a good point, because as we spoke, having the 3D model in place and having the core functionality bits in place, we just add scenarios after scenarios, so the development time is much shorter now that we have established the foundation of it. Yeah. I had a question from Steinar.
Could you say something about you mentioned our rollout period 4 to 6 months, but for your own organization when it comes to cost and the resources you have to put into this?
How do you convince your cost responsible to invest? Is that the part of the question?
Were you sort of surprised by the easy installation and process, or
super smooth process? It was on time and budget. Something that we liked about afterwards, both phases. The reason that we at all continue with second phase, we appreciated very much the project management capacity of PaleBlue. We always had one person that was almost always available. So from the user point of view, it was fantastic. Money-wise, possible, very good.
I'll sum up for the online folks. So the question was on how was it straightforward to deploy the both kinds of experiences, VR and screen-based, and the answer, I'll just sum it up, that it was straightforward and easy, and it was, yeah, it wasn't an issue, and both from the user side and from the cost management side.
Yeah, my question, how did you practically solve the logistics and the technical issues with the VR headsets, computers, user? Did you have a person facilitating a group who went through VR? So how did you practically solve that?
Yeah, maybe Alex, you could move slightly closer to the microphone. The microphone is just here on the table. Yes.
Yeah, I could say that we had some introduction sessions. We had PaleBlue over in the beginning. Then whenever we needed, they just popped by, and it was very intuitive. You know, nowadays VR, it's very easy.
I remember we had a dedicated room, and I think,
yeah, we still have it.
Yeah, so there was a starting guide in there, so it was kind of self-serve solution where people could come across and just start it up and use it. But sometimes I think my understanding is that maybe you were helping as far as
I was in the room all the time. People would just pop by and they use it.
Right.
Me.
So you provided instructions on the table.
Yeah. Instructions were on the table. It was enough for them.
And for the 2 other session, familiarization and then the work permit, they received a link just before they was offshore through the system. We have a Da Vinci system, so they have a link and then they can do it on their own devices at home before they go up. So, yeah.
So that was embedded in our internal process already. So you didn't need any hardware.
And that's a very good point, and I think we'll come back to it after the topic we have, which is scalability. Why we think that not focusing just on VR, but paying a good amount of attention to screen-based solutions is a very, very good strategy, because it's really allows you to deploy something to your organization. It's essentially a linkage, could be integrated in the e-learning system or LMS, so much easier to kind of scale across large numbers. So I want to talk about the work that we've been doing over the last, I think, 2 years. Very condensed efforts to create useful, very effective gamified platform for enabling digital learning, platform that is giving good results in terms of knowledge retention, in terms of learning effect. And I will just use now some minutes to demonstrate how it works. I'll talk about the main elements that basically go back what we discussed with Scott and with Jan, the principles of how one motivates the audience, of how one retains the audience, and how it's possible to build up knowledge in a gamified setting. So, new gamified platform. As we spoke and as we discussed the traditional shortcomings of traditional e-learning, because e-learning also comes in different shapes and forms. E-learning sometimes is text, sometimes it's text with voice, sometimes people just take their PowerPoints and turn those into kind of e-learning slides. There's also e-learning that is videos. But what we're hearing from our partners in the industry, what we're hearing from our clients, it is not easy to engage and motivate using traditional forms of e-learning. What people do when they have to go through a mandatory e-learning class for work or for something, what they do, they try to be done with it as soon as possible and get back to work. And why they do this, because obviously you're presented with a question at the end. Of course, they fast forward through all the slides, clicking next, next, next as fast as possible. And then they just have to figure out the final challenge, the questions, and be done with it for good. People also take screenshots of the content of the slides with their phone to make sure that they can go back and trace to the real answer. So that's the reality of what's happening with e-learning today. It works, but it has its limitations. So with all the work that we've been doing, the challenge has been to understand how can we change that, how we can really turn it around. So instead of dreading e-learning, one would actively look forward to engaging in a game like that. So I'm going to show you a part of our new gamification platform for training for specific safety aspects. We'll talk about those aspects in a moment. But first, I just wanted to give you a first-hand experience of how the gamified training works. I'm going to use my browser as I do. So what we're looking at is a learning journey. When you're starting on a new course, such as work authorization, you want to understand how work permits, how work authorization works. So think of it as a learning journey that we'll get back to, that takes you through a number of challenges, right? And you see that some of the challenges in the future, and essentially you'll be certified and you'll complete the course. But there are some higher levels of this that are locked. You can't access them yet. So you have to go through the first challenge. Even here, you have your freedom of choice. You have some way of being autonomous and deciding for yourself where you want to go, how you want to address it, right? So you're starting as a beginner. Well, you have 0 experience points, 0 XPs. And essentially, we'll look at different kind of activities because variety is very important. If all of you are saying is one kind of mechanic, one kind of form of slide with text, with images, you'll get bored. You'll hate it quite soon. But if we can make it varying, if you can assume a role, if you can with that role actually feel yourself in the shoes of a person doing something, then you'll be much better motivated. Then you'll actually maybe like it. We assume a role of a paper approval, right? So we have to review certain work permits that are simplified and gamified, but still you can go through them and say, well, Firewatch is not assigned, so yeah, this is not acceptable. That is correct. Okay, all right, that's one we solved. So here's another one that says hot work equipment wasn't checked. And for example, yeah, and we say that's not proper. So what would the system say to that if we say that that specific?
Seems safe. Equipment was checked this day, which is sufficient.
Yeah, there was a bit of a catch in there. So you have to look for clues, right? So it was said basically that the equipment was checked this morning, but not in the last 90 minutes. And like, not a big deal, right? We can still go with that permit. So a very simple game on the surface, but it has a lot of content that is randomized. So the challenges are randomized. The kinds of work permits I just fast forward. I'll try to make sure this one is off by the date. So I'll deny it. The date is not correct. This one I think is okay. So I just need one more correct answer. And I think this is okay. Again, approve it. No, combustible materials weren't covered. So, all right, I only have one chance to get 1 star. I'll try really hard. It looks okay. General assessment, I think that is not good enough. Yes, general assessment wasn't good enough. Okay. We're coming back to the point of unambiguous feedback. You have to be very direct that you did something good, that you achieved something, that the challenges you're solving, they were not for nothing, and we have to be a little bit over the top, not too much, but a little bit. So all right, I'm earning 1 star and I'm earning some experience points as a character. Not too bad. I'll use those later, I guess. Now you see that I've got 1 star on this specific assignment, right? I could go back to it and it will be randomized. It will not be presented with the same challenges. It will be some new challenges generated for me. And that's the beauty of replayability and being able to go back and improve without going through the same again and again and again. So that's, I think, very important point to mention. I'm going to show you a different kind of challenge, which is this. I also going to start with the sounds on. So yeah, I'm on the rig floor. I control the character. I'm at the very beginning of my learning journey. So obviously I've never seen this before. And we are showing you some helping elements. We're pointing, or there's a pointing arrow telling you where to go. We're highlighting the character that you have to interact with. So it's easier when you're starting, right? But when you're progressing to the next difficulty levels, the challenges will be more and more complex and challenging in the end. So let's go through this. This is all still work authorization training. So I have to understand how work authorization permit works.
Hey, there you are. I just found that this station is broken, but not beyond repair. Get a work permit?
Okay, I have to react to that.
This is my first day working here. Could you tell me please what we should do?
The job safety analysis process identifies the basic steps included in a task and the hazards associated with each step. You have performed the job safety analysis with the team and ready for the next step.
Welcome to Work Permit System 5000B.
Great work permit.
Your previous work permit was not closed. Do you want to close it?
Okay.
Reminder. Remember to close your previous work permit. Your previous work permit was not closed. Do you want to close it? Reminder. Remember to close your previous work permit.
You have properly closed the previous work permit and now have also created and printed the new work permit.
Hi there, hope you had a great weekend.
I did. We were preparing this demo, right? But it was great. Yeah, can you approve the work permit? So now I'm talking to my,
I see it's for today, and I understand that this work needs 3 days to finish. Remember that all permits have a specified duration, and have to be renewed after that. All right. Here is your authorization and my approval.
Safe to meet you. I see here that you're working in one shift, and another shift starts on this permit after lunch.
You must follow the defined process for handover of permits between shifts.
There you go, this permit is now approved. Be safe.
Thank you. Okay.
Now we finally have a work permit?
A lot of passive aggressive life for this one. Okay. Great.
All members of the work team are required to review and sign the work permit.
Super. We have reviewed and signed the permit. Let's get busy, guys.
All right. Right, so what we're looking at are challenges that I'm facing through my learning journey. The second one is pretty much also randomized. So each time you're starting it, you're seeing slightly different scenes, slightly different environments. I'll show you that in a moment. But again, it goes back to replayability and it goes back to autonomy, right? So you are in control of the pace you want to learn, of how you want to address it. And I think there's a very important question here that many would ask that are familiar with the traditional e-learning. Where's the theoretical information? Why don't you give me the information before you ask me? And the answer to that is just the gaming learning approach is completely the opposite. You put the player into the environment that is challenging. And by making mistakes, the player learns the right things to do. And there's a bit of a reinforced learning in there, built in, just like with the neural network. Everyone has one. Just because you're making mistakes, and that triggers, oh, I could have gotten a better score. I could have done better on that one. So now we've been looking, so now we've been looking at just one course, work authorization. I'll give you one tiny example of a different kind of experience or activity, and then I'll talk about the elements that basically make this possible and how these elements are properly used for professional training. I think here's an example of an activity that we're doing in the field. This is confined space. This is whole another module, whole another learning journey that you have to complete. And in here, you are acting on your own, and this is first-person experience in the field.
Great that you joined me today. We have got a task to prepare the area for entry.
First, we need to locate the proper hatch for entry.
Again, this is easy, so all right, kind of obvious.
Find the vault that allows entry. Point and click on its hatch. Right, this is the vault with the proper sign, allowing us to enter.
Yeah, this was just to show a different kind of activity, different perspective. But I came to this course for a whole different perspective, because there's also this kind of activity called spotting, and we have other kinds, but this kind is about looking at a complex work situation. This is randomized, so each time you're getting new challenges, and then you have to figure out whether certain elements are risk or safe. So then again, this is just to go through different kind of activities, and there's many, many different activities phased into different kinds of thematic areas, right? But this is a confined space journey, so obviously you have to understand what's right and what's wrong. This is obviously a risk, so yeah. And then you'll be presented several rooms like this. If I solve all the challenges in this room and I say maybe this is safe, it's not safe, then I'm getting a an explanation. There's a voice as well, but we've disabled that for now, just to assure good sound on the remote, folks. This is, I guess, safe. Right, so go through a spotting area like this. It will regenerate a whole new, I think, area for us now, so that it's, yeah, it's looking completely different, right? So it's building out those Lego blocks, completely new challenge. And now you have to, again, assess those things. Yeah, I wouldn't think that this specific gas situation is so healthy. But yeah, so think about the ability to permutate that we are using to create new challenges, to create things that are fun and replayable. So all this was a quick dive into the gaming elements, and I will use some minutes to just try to decompose that a little bit, just to understand what it is that we were looking at, right? Before we do that, I'll say that this is a part of our new course catalog that we're launching, which goes onto HSC training in a gamified format. Each course is a learning journey, and you can complete it. It's meant for organizations, industrial organizations, whether that's oil and gas, energy, renewables, or construction. And it's based on IOGP life-saving rules. IOGP is International Oil and Gas Producers Organization, and has coined life-saving rules that are the core safety principles, right? The very foundational safety principles that are applicable to many different industries, and you have to train on them if you want to make sure that, yeah, you don't injure yourself and others. So this is what goes into our course catalog now in the start. Those are the core foundational safety principles. And yeah, this is live, this is online. You can check it out on our website. Quick listing of the design principles. So how do you design a valuable learning experience in a gamified format? It has to have a learning value. You can't go around that. It has to be teaching you something, right? It has to be challenging. Scott said a lot about that. It has to be challenging, but challenging in a sufficient way, right? And the moment you kind of grow out of that, it has to challenge you for some higher difficulties, with higher challenges. It has to be fun. Maybe that's an easy part, but maybe that's the hard part. How do you make things fun? How to generate content that is kind of interesting, but it's not completely dumbed down, right? There is no learning value. It has to have variety. It has to give you feedback. We saw that. It has to be replayable. It has to be configurable and extendable for your organization's part, because definitely you want to customize those procedures. So let's look into some of those. So we looked at some of the game types, but not all of them. But we built up our courses of learning journeys, built up of different game types, so that you have a lot of variety, that you're really interested to see what's behind the corner, what happens next, what kind of challenge will it be, what kind of game. So we really look forward to that, and having a good variety helps. So we spent quite a bit of time perfecting those little games to make sure that they engage very well with the audience, or the other way around. Yeah, so this goes back to autonomy, because you can choose. You can choose your next battle, your next challenge. You're not just following this railroad track, slide to slide. So you make your own choices between games and also within games. Learning journey, very powerful tool, right? So we talked about that again, and it goes to many principles. It goes to autonomy, of allowing you to choose how to go, but it goes to competence, just general competence development and segmentation. Yeah, and like taking it from one level of difficulty to another. I don't know. Yeah, but we spoke about unlocking next difficulties. When you get at least 1 star, good enough level in each difficulty for all of those activities, then you unlock the next level, and then the next level, and then you unlock your completion certificate, which is all fun. Character interactions. Yeah, so this is a part of the engagement. You're not just reading some texts. You can see some personas in there with slightly different ways of behavior, with slightly different ways of addressing you. You have different relations to those. Some of the people we're interacting were the safety officers, and one of them is your line manager, the other one is a colleague. So you really can relate, and you can start building some sort of emotional understanding of who those personas are. This helps. This helps to connect. This helps to engage. This is why we're using characters. Relatedness. Back to the science of gamification. Thank you. You and your XP, right? So it's not just completing e-learning. There's also you. There's also your character that you can level up, that you can gain experience points on. So in the end, you'll be able to complete certain challenges using your set of skills that you've acquired in previous challenges. So there's a lot of us to still built in around this model, but very exciting model that we're convinced that this aids corporate learning as well. Randomization. So as we've seen, the very same environments are randomized from session to session so that you don't feel that you're repeating yourself. And this is randomly reinforcement element of the motivational techniques that is being put in here. Well, we've seen this guy. And yeah, I think he's supposed to say something.
To prepare the area for entry.
Flott at du ble med meg I dag. Vi har en oppgave med å klargjøre området for innreise.
That was loud. What these elements are, they're text-based, so they're brought to life with text-to-speech, which allows us to produce a lot of common content in a very short time, and also to translate this content for different audiences and different geographies. So this also opens a lot of possibilities just because the platform supports this built in. This allows us to tailor to different kinds of workforce within same organizations or across continents. Important that when we are building content, there's certain interactions and certain activities, and those activities are available on screen. Once that you've completed your building blocks, you can easily translate those building blocks to VR. So pretty much the same experience of approaching a confined space can be taught for some on screen and for some in a VR session, when the very same actions would then be not done by mouse pointing and clicking, but instead will be done with your VR hands. So you'll do the same steps basically, but using a wider set of tools that is available to you as a trainee. So this is quite important that one could have this configurability. And as we spoke previously, VR is bottleneck, definitely, but VR is giving you greater immersion. So there are pros and cons, and you should choose your tools wisely. And it's good to have that choice. Theming. This is probably one of the more powerful tools under the belt here, just because having prepared some sort of content and set of challenges for offshore, for oil and gas, we can, with a click of a switch, turn to a factory floor exercise, office environment exercise, and construction site exercise, right? So it's fairly easy using this real-time dynamic Lego block system to tag certain aspects of your 3D environment with certain areas. So this object appears only in construction training, and this object only appears in offshore and gas. And depending on what kind of training you start, it will, well, pull and combine your scenes, your environments, and perhaps parts of your challenges based on those building blocks. So we could build once and deploy to many across many different verticals, which is super powerful for us as developers of this. And of course, editing content. You don't have to draw things in 3D. If you all you want to do, you want to adjust and add more dialogues, interactions, and challenges that you go through. This is all available in an easy text-based, table-based format. So there's content editing. Very important point is, of course, how is this deployed? How can you deploy this kind of training? And you've seen that these modules are easily integratable online, so as using them from my browser. The same goes for any learning management system out there, any e-learning system, yeah? Because there's a certain protocol called SCORM that you could import training modules into a system. And these are SCORM modules. So just in addition to your traditional SCORM modules of e-learning slides, you can now extend those with these interactive trainings. So this becomes super easy, and again, on the web or inside your learning management system of your organization, super available at your fingertips. Scalability, we talked about it. I won't go back to it, but again, for us now, we see, of course, there's a lot of appeal behind VR, and we still do quite a bit of VR. We train astronauts in VR. We work with agricultural robots in VR and different projects that we do VR for. And yet, as the transition with Neptune Energy or what Energi has shown, it's great to build some impressive cases to kind of sell your digital training in the organization. And the moment you have to scale, perhaps you want to add screen-based to your training, just because then you are able to reach everyone in the organization. So this is how we see this question of scalability, and that is how we're working these days. So we would very much have our content now available on screens, and we were very VR focused in the past.
Both in terms of hardware, but also different types of trainings, be it spotting, procedures, VR or screen-based, which are the most popular nowadays? If you look at your customer base, what do they go for? I assume not everyone will go for VR.
Yeah, that is a very, very good question, because it really goes on to the type of tasks and the audience of the training. Because some sort of tasks that are very technical and they're very kind of goes a lot into the hand motorics. It's better to do that in VR, of course. Some of the trainings, some of the advanced trainings that are listed, some of the work that we've done for European Space Agency, Johnson Space Agency, but even Saudi Aramco, we went with VR just because together with the clients, we felt that's the best way. Just the tasks of this intricacy, of this amount of detail and complexity are best taught on VR approaches. Now we've done, of course, many more screen-based trainings. And sometimes we've applied the same experience to both ends, such as with the Oslo municipality that wanted to train on certain aspects of familiarization of the new build community building. And with that, we enabled VR stations. But then again, you have to remember that you bottlenecked on the amount of your VR. They're giving you a lot of immersion. They're giving you a lot of training value. But you can't train maybe everyone if you're talking about thousands of people. For screens, we went with screens, and then we were able to use that tool. And this is a very interesting point. They were able to use the screen-based tool externally. So sending that to their suppliers to use this tool and to see how the building was coming together, how the different floors were planned, what kind of equipment was used with the floors. So yeah, so there's obviously a number of factors you have to consider, choosing between one or the other. Sometimes you choose both, and I think that's as short answer to that question as it could pose at the moment. We have a question online, so maybe we take that. How many variations randomization of each module do you create? We don't create randomization of a module, but we create randomization of elements that build a module. So say we're looking at a randomized scene with confined spaces. The module itself, it's not that we just change the whole module, but elements, each worker, each piece of equipment could be this, it could be that. So there are, say, points of interest, 4 interactivity points of interest in each scene. And each of those has, I don't know, 10, 15 different variations. So when you look at permutations of that, of course, it's a great number, but we also try to stage that through the difficulty levels. So some of the easier challenges would be appearing at the easier level, some of the medium and harder would be, so it's spread out. But generally, you get a good set of new challenges each time you start.
Yes, it looks like it's mostly running in the browser.
Correct.
So could you tell us about how do you get around the challenges of bandwidth and performance? You know, I'm guessing people have different, bandwidth and performance on their computers. So
yeah,
say something about that.
Bandwidth. It's not streaming. So you're using a little bit of time at the start when just starting the course for the first time. Then maybe using a minute to download all the content. But then there's no clinical, so there's no lagging when you're actually going through this. But you have to wait for the initial 1 minute for one first time, depending on your connection speed, of course, but that's how it is, right? Performance-wise, you've seen, well, again, we're not pushing for AAA graphics in here. We're trying to optimize and make the performance possible on a variety of kinds of machines. It won't run on, I don't know, a computer dating back 20 years, but on 10-year-old computers, we are seeing that this would work. Again, we're quite concerned with kind of covering a good amount of configurations out there. Again?
Question for Neptune and your experience in the model. Use it only for communication and training, or do you see that you can have a multi-use of the model that you made to explain accidents, incidents, use it for engineering, etc.?
Yes, we see the opportunities and have given the mission to our training division to look at what kind of course they can gamify. Yeah, so they are working with it.
A lot of the cost of training people is to travel them from one place to the training place. Do you see that you reduce that cost now so they can do it at home before they travel in, or do you still take them to the office to train?
No.
So that's a question to them.
Yeah, we train them at home or wherever they receive the link, so they can do it everywhere. Yeah.
Thank you all for coming online and locally. Thank you very much. The recording will be available. I don't know, Scott, if you have any closing words as well.
No, just thanks for attending. Thanks for attending. We can take one-on-one questions.
So we'll be happy to hear your feedback. Thank you very much. Thank you.